This is CBN Newswatch.
And thanks for joining us for CBN Newswatch. I'm Wendy Griffith. Well, this week, the Supreme Court is back in session. Today, justices weighed in on the issue of discrimination laws and if a person can be fired for being gay or transgender. Our Paul Strand brings us details from Washington.
What's involved here is what the law means when it says the word sex, because you are not allowed since 1964 to discriminate on the basis of sex. We have three cases here. Two of them involve homosexuals. One involves a transgender person, and they all say they were discriminated against because of either, in the case of the two, their sexual orientation, the other, his gender identity. And so they want those things to be included in the legal definition of the word sex. On the other side of it, people say you have to worry about the law of unintended consequences. Especially women are worried about this because we have seen in some cases transgenders who are, they're males who say they are female, and they've gotten onto female sports teams and really wiped out the chances for the girls to compete fairly. We've seen things like restrooms where now boys can go in and use the girls' restrooms. In England right now, there are girls who are skipping school because they're afraid to use the restrooms. And also we have things like women's shelters, where some men now are demanding to use the showers or to sleep right beside the women, and women are afraid. So the court has a lot more to consider here than just whether they are going to be discriminating against homosexuals and transgenders. They also have to worry about the rights of women. This is Paul Strand reporting to you from the Supreme Court.
Thanks, Paul. And Roger Ganem with Liberty Counsel joins us now with more on the significance of these cases. Welcome to Newswatch, Roger.
Thanks for having me, Wendy.
Well, you filed two briefs in support of the employers in these cases. What points were in them?
Well, it's important to remember here that the federal anti-discrimination laws recognizing things like race, religion, and sex recognize objective categories that employers can work with. When you try to add the concepts, the fluid and subjective concepts like sexual orientation and gender identity into that mix, it creates an unworkable situation for employers. Employers should be able to make distinctions based on the objective biological differences between men and women. That means separate bathrooms, even separate dress codes. That ought to be allowed for employers, and changing the law through a court decision, which is what the plaintiffs in these cases are trying to do, wouldn't work for anyone.
Roger, is the idea that a person's mental perception of their sex versus their actual biological sex, is that the key issue the court will have to address?
Well, really the issue for the court, what it should be deciding is what did Congress mean in 1964 when it put the word sex into anti-discrimination law? Now, there's no one in the world who believes that any member of Congress in 1964 thought that it meant anything other than biological sex. And so the court should have an easy case before it. But what they're going to be asked to do is to really rewrite the law, do something that Congress has not been willing or able to do, to change the meaning of sex to these subjective categories of sexual orientation or gender identity. And it really would require employers to try to figure out what kind of fluid or subjective category they were working with, and that's not fair to employers.
Roger, medically speaking, we've heard from many doctors who say until the gender identity culture war that we're now in, the struggle with gender identity was classified as a psychological disorder. Will evidence like this come into play and possibly make a difference?
It shouldn't, because like I said, the Supreme Court's job here is to decide what did Congress mean in 1964. But no doubt there will be arguments made about the current medical consensus or the current medical treatments for people who express gender dysphoria, which is the new term for gender identity disorder. But those arguments really shouldn't matter. The court's role is to interpret the law as written. It's Congress's job to change the definition of sex or add new definitions if Congress thinks that's appropriate. So hopefully the court here will do its job and decide that sex means sex, biological sex, and not one of these other subjective categories.
So any indication of how you think the court will rule?
Oh, it's always difficult to predict. I think a lot of people trust the originalist instincts of at least 5 members of the court today to rule in favor of upholding the law as written. That is, sex means biological sex. But we've been surprised before, so it really is difficult to predict how the court will rule on this issue. Sure is.
Roger Ganim with the Liberty Counsel, thanks so much for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Well, in the aftermath of our culture's glorification of the transgender movement, many people now regret choosing a different gender. They've begun what's called detransitioning. Dale Hurd has the story.
Jeffrey McCall used to live as a transgender woman until he says God's love transformed his life. He's now a leader of a growing movement of transgender persons who regret changing sexes and want to change back.
There is a group that is, and I believe a massive group coming out of this community, so the church has to be ready to love them, bring them in, and help disciple them and grow them.
Britain's Sky News reports that 28-year-old Charlie Evans, who publicly shared her story about regretting her decision to become a man, has been contacted by hundreds of 19 and 20-year-olds who have had full gender reassignment surgery and now wish they hadn't. Walt Heyer, the author of Trans Life Survivors, who had surgery to become a woman and later detransitioned back to a male, said he learned his real problem, and the problem for many transgender persons, is a condition known as dissociative identity disorder caused by childhood trauma.
They just don't want to be who they are. They don't want to be the person who's been abused and hurt.
Heyer says what people seeking transgender surgery really need is the healing love of Christ. Dale Hurd, CBN News.
Thanks, Dale. Well, back in Washington, the White House is finalizing its strategy against the Democrats' move to impeach President Trump. The Trump team is working on that after 2 weeks of what its allies have called a listless and unfocused response to the impeachment probe, something the president says is not valid.
Well, the impeachment inquiry is a scam.
The White House says it will send a letter to House Speaker Nancy Pelosi saying it will not cooperate with the impeachment because Democrats have not held an official vote on it. Hopes for a Brexit deal by October 31st are not looking good. That's the date Britain was scheduled to leave the European Union. But a source in the British Prime Minister's office says a Brexit deal is now essentially impossible following a call between Boris Johnson and Angela Merkel. Merkel reportedly warned Johnson that the only way to break the deadlock over a deal was for Northern Ireland to stay in the EU customs union and for Britain to permanently accept EU rules on trade. We're following the latest developments with Syria after the president announced plans to withdraw troops. We'll break that down ahead with a live interview from George Thomas. Stay tuned.
Remember for a moment what it was like to be a child. You believed every story you were told. You saw a world full of endless possibilities. What stories will the world's orphaned and at-risk children believe? We believe the Bible tells the only story truly worth believing. We believe that every child should have the opportunity to dream, the chance to take challenges and turn them into possibilities, the chance to stand on the promises of God, to recognize their place in the greatest story ever told. They have their whole lives ahead of them. Theirs is a world of endless possibilities. They are looking for a story to believe. We will tell them that story. Will you join us?
Today, President Trump is defending his decision to withdraw troops from northern Syria, saying he made a campaign promise to bring troops home. On Monday night, a senior administration official clarified that the president is repositioning the troops, not withdrawing them. Right now, about 1,000 U.S. troops are positioned in northern Syria. Without the Americans present, the Kurds fear Turkey President Erdogan will launch a threatened military incursion into the area. Some of the president's most loyal supporters are speaking out against this move, saying it puts the Kurds, who partnered with U.S. troops, at major risk.
This is a big win for Iran and Assad, a big win for ISIS.
After threatening to destroy and obliterate the economy on Turkey on Twitter, the president announced plans to host Turkish President Erdogan at the White House next month. Joining us now is senior international correspondent George Thomas from northern Turkey. George, thanks for being with us today. What's Turkey's response to this apparent backtracking now by the United States?
Look, Wendy, from the get-go, President Erdogan has made it very clear to this White House administration that it wants to clear this part of northeastern Turkey, northeastern Syria off the YPG. They believe that this group is affiliated with another Kurdish militia group called the PKK, the People's Workers' Party. Look, overnight, Turkish forces struck a major ammunition supply chain that goes from that connects the Syrian Kurds with the Iraqi Kurds. That was basically sending a signal to the United States that they were very, very serious about carrying out this invasion. The Turkish Minister of Defense reiterated what the Erdogan party has said, the government has said, that they want to clear this corridor of northeast Syria of what they call terrorists. This is in reference to the Kurdish militia group known as the YPG.
George, so the president said he's withdrawing troops. Now we're hearing the administration say, not so fast, we're just repositioning. What is the latest? What are you hearing on the ground there in where you are?
Yeah, well, here in Turkey, it's look, it was a big surprise that on Sunday night the president gave Erdogan the green light to carry out the invasion, basically saying that the United States and its forces, which had about 1,000 forces positioned in northeast Syria, that they would not get in Turkey's way. But obviously, folks from Lindsey Graham to Nikki Haley to others, on both sides of the political aisle, came out saying that this is a disastrous move. This is not a good idea, primarily because, keep in mind, when the United States was looking for an ally to join the fight against ISIS, it was the Kurds that came to the United States and joined the coalition. And remember, the Kurds have lost close to about 11,000 of its fighters as it has cleared Syria and most of Iraq of ISIS fighters. So clearly, the Kurds are receiving this news as, look, this is a kick in the teeth. This is you guys dropping us like a bad habit. When you don't need us, you're done with us. And so, obviously, the Republicans and Democrats have criticized the president for this move, because this is in essence saying to one of our strongest allies in the fight against ISIS that we no longer need you because we need our boys, men and women, back home.
George, there's an estimated 15,000 ISIS fighters in prisons in northeast Syria. What is their fate if Turkey invades this area?
Yeah, you have to keep in mind, during the Syrian civil war, this actual part of northeast Syria, it was autonomous, basically was not touched with the rest of the civil war that was taking place. And so you had U.S. forces combined with other U.S. coalition forces, plus the Kurdish militia, and they managed to keep an autonomous, safe region. You had Arab allies, you had Christians in this particular region, but you also had close to about 15,000 ISIS fighters that are now in various prisons in northeast Syria. And what the Kurds are saying overnight is that if you are going to attack us, basically warning the United States, warning Syria, warning the Turks, if you are going to attack us, we are going to open the prisons to these various facilities and allow these 15,000 plus ISIS fighters to escape. That would be disastrous. Obviously, the Kurds are very, very concerned that how they would survive a Turkish invasion. Clearly, this has, over the last 24, 48 hours, has changed dramatically because of the pushback from both Democrats and Republicans.
It sure has. George, thanks. Great information. We appreciate it. Stay safe there in northern Turkey. All right, well, up next, we'll head to Nashville and see how a former president and country superstar are teaming up to build homes.
Give me that. Bye. Sure, life is busy, but I found a way to make a huge difference in people's lives. I guess you could say I'm changing the world right here from home. I bring medical supplies and doctors to people in need, and dig wells so that villagers can have clean and safe water to drink. I make it possible to preach the gospel in over 100 countries, including right here in America. And when disaster strikes, I'm there, providing food, thank you, and emergency supplies to give people hope again. Every day, CBN and I are making the world a better place. Here you go. My life is hectic, so I joined CBN through Pledge Express. My bank does all the work, and I know that my gift is being used where it's needed most. So become a CBN partner and join Pledge Express, because you can do a world of good right from where you are. Hi, good morning. Are you ready to get started?
Hey, if you're tired and exhausted all day, you can't think clearly, and you really just need a cup or even a pot of coffee to get through your day, then join me, Dr. Josh Axe, for this new series where I'm going to teach you how to transform your diet and use essential oils and supplements to get a better night's sleep.
Protect your sleep and live your best life with innovative information from 5 leading sleep experts.
If you're not a great sleeper, you can do things to make yourself a great sleeper. If you're already a pretty good sleeper, you can enhance your sleep and be even better.
Discover a sleep-enhancing bedtime routine, how to put insomnia to rest, learn how to relieve pain that disturbs sleep, and much more in Protect Your Sleep.
Everything you do better with a good night's sleep.
Wake up to your best life. Call 1-800-700-7000 to get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
Don't miss out on this brand new series.
We will move the American embassy to the eternal capital of the Jewish people, Jerusalem.
As the nations rage, you can stand with Israel.
History is being written, and I want to be a part of it.
Call 1-800-700-7000 and get to life.
This is our nature as a country.
Discover the untold story of how Israeli volunteers are changing the world.
We consider it our duty to reach out and help others around the world.
For a gift of $10 or more, you can own the acclaimed CBN documentary To Life.
To treat a human, no matter what he is, which religious he has, which color he is. This is what I'm doing.
Support Israel in their time of need. Get to Life, now available on DVD. Call 1-800-700-7000 or log on to CBN.com.
And I wish that other people throughout the world could see this side of Israel.
The longest living U.S. president in America is back to building homes after a fall this weekend. President Jimmy Carter made his first public appearance in Nashville Sunday evening for a Habitat for Humanity public rally. The 95-year-old had a black eye and 14 stitches, but says nothing could keep him from getting to Nashville for the latest project. And country superstar Trisha Yearwood is also a longtime Habitat for Humanity volunteer. Ephraim Graham recently spoke with Yearwood and Habitat for Humanity CEO Jonathan Reckford about the event in Nashville.
Trisha Yearwood and Jonathan Reckford join us now. First of all, set the scene. You guys are on the side of a build there. What's happening?
A lot of love in the background. Garth always says the sound of hammers is the sound of love. It's we're building 21 homes in Nashville. Really a city that is really struggling with needing affordable housing. It's a big issue, and we're helping build people's homes they're going to live in and create a sense of community, and it's awesome.
It is the 36th year President and Mrs. Carter have come out somewhere in the world to build homes, but also bring attention to the need for safe, decent, affordable housing here in this community, but across the country as well.
Now, Tricia, I know that you and your husband, Garth Brooks, started volunteering with Habitat for Humanity in New Orleans following Hurricane Katrina. All these years later, what keeps you guys coming back?
I can't really describe the feeling that you get. you know, President Carter famously says you get more out of it than you put in. And it's just true. It's almost a selfish feeling of when someone says thank you, you want to say no, 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 thank you, because it's just, you never know how much good you're going to feel helping someone else. And that's really what this whole Your Better Angels is about the spirit of volunteering and getting out and doing something for somebody else, what it does for your heart and your soul. And it's just something that we need to put out into the world. And that's what this feels like. Garth and I, from the very first build, we're hooked. There's a lot of ways to give back, but actually getting together with people and sharing this experience is like nothing else I've ever done.
You mentioned Our Better Angels, and we know now that is a book by Jonathan Rector. Tell me about that and the inspiration for it.
So this is a book inspired really by President Carter, and it came originally from an op-ed he wrote after Hurricane Harvey, talking about how when the waters rise, our better angels come out, and you see people going to help their neighbor, and you don't care if the person rescuing you is from a different race or religion, you're just thrilled they're helping. And his challenge, which turned into the book, which he wrote the foreword for, was why can't we do that every day for these slow-moving crises in our country and world? And I hope it's a collection of stories, including stories of President and Mrs. Carter, that I've seen over the years of ordinary and everyday people doing extraordinary things to build community. And my hope really is that it will inspire people to look around in their own communities and say, I can do something, that I will look to my own better angels. And the not-so-secret beautiful part of that we've seen with Habitat for Humanity is when you do that, you find more joy, more purpose, more love, more fulfillment. So it ultimately is something that you can be lifted up as you lift up others.
Tricia, what would you say to women out there considering coming out to volunteer?
I would say come out here. I'm actually wearing my Women's Build T-shirt today. It's really, you know, a lot of my friends are like, oh, I don't know how to do any construction. I don't know how to swing a hammer. I don't know how to do any of that. You don't have to know anything. I have learned on the job in these last 11 years how to drywall, how to frame a wall, how to put in a window. And then there's all sorts of different jobs you can do, and there's something for everybody. So I would absolutely encourage you to come out, and you'll learn something new, and then you might just like feel like you could build your own house after this.
All right, thank you both so much. The book is called Our Better Angels. Tricia Yearwood, Jonathan Rector, thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks for having us on.
God bless them, and God bless whoever's living in those homes. Well, stay with us. There is much more of CBN Newswatch ahead.
We will move the American embassy to the eternal capital of the Jewish people, Jerusalem.
As the nations rage, you can stand with Israel.
History is being written, and I want to be a part of it.
Call 1-800-700-7000 and get to life.
This is our nature as a country.
Discover the untold story of how Israeli volunteers are changing the world.
We consider it our duty to reach out and help others around the world.
For a gift of $10 or more, you can own the acclaimed CBN documentary To Life.
To treat a human, no matter what he is, which religious he have, which color he is, this is what I'm doing.
Support Israel in their time of need. Get to Life, now available on DVD. Call 1-800-700-7000 or log on to cbn.com.
And I wish that other people throughout the world could see this side of Israel.
Orphans Promise is committed to loving and serving at-risk children, to helping keep families together, and to creating opportunities for strong and sustainable communities around the world. We're working in over 60 countries around the world, and with your help, we can do even more. There's an old African proverb I love that says, if you want to run fast, run alone. But if you want to run far, run together. At Orphans Promise, we want to run far so we can touch the lives of as many orphaned and vulnerable children as possible. But we don't want to go alone. We're out to change the world, one child, one family, one community at a time. Will you join us?
region's first ROTC graduate student.
Jews around the world are celebrating Yom Kippur, the holiest day of the Jewish year. They observe this day with fasting and a special prayer that has significance for both Jews and Christians. Chris Mitchell explains.
It's called the Vidui, a prayer of repentance and a plea for forgiveness.
The Vidui is the central prayer of confession and for forgiveness of the Jewish people on Yom Kippur. And it's a prayer that they pray not only on behalf of themselves, but on behalf of all the Jewish people around the world.
Reverend Pileggi serves as the rector of Christ Church in the heart of Jerusalem's Old City. He studied the Jewish roots of Christianity for nearly 30 years. He says the Vidui recognizes, as Jeremiah the prophet wrote, that the heart is deceitful above all things, and that deeds need to follow repentance.
One thing that we learn from the Jewish people, something quite important, especially about Yom Kippur, that it's not enough to say you're sorry. You have to confess, say you're sorry, and then at the same time take practical steps to change your behavior.
The Vidui contains sections to be said both corporately and prayed by the individual. The group repeats confessions like, "We sinned before you, we betrayed you, we spoke falsely. Now we want to repent and ask your forgiveness." The individual prays in part, "O God and Father, maker of heaven and earth, I penitently acknowledge my sins, desiring to learn what is your will concerning me and resolving to devote myself more faithfully to your holy service." Pileggi says Christians can find a parallel between Yom Kippur and the teachings of Jesus.
Now, we have a saying of Jesus, don't we? It says, if you bring your gift to the altar and your brother has something against you, leave your gift at the altar and go and be reconciled with your brother. Jewish tradition says, go get your relationship right with your neighbor, with your brother, with your family member. Forgive and be reconciled. And then, on the Day of Atonement, when you begin to fast and pray and to confess, God will hear your prayer and forgive you as you have forgiven others. It's a teaching of Jesus, and it's also something that's part and parcel of Jewish tradition. And here the two line up very nicely.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Thanks so much, Chris. Well, that's going to do it for this edition of CBN Newswatch. Remember, you can find more of our news programs on the CBN News Channel anytime or online with cbnnews.com. Also, tell us what you think about the stories you've seen today by emailing us at newswatch@cbn.com or reach out on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. We hope you'll join us next time. Until then, from all of us here at CBN Newswatch, have a great day and God bless you.